I'm hard-pressed to think of something I like more from a streaming show.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the horrorofbabylonpodcast@gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/thehorrorofbabylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to a very somber and dreary and sad bonus episode of The Horror of Babylon, where we are finally heading to St. Patrick's to attend Midnight Mass. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Ryan, will you pray with me?
No. But
Ryan,
what?
Do you forgive me?
No. But I would pray with, but I still probably wouldn't forgive Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron, and Ben the Fourth, Patron of Hope, and me the Fifth, the Rainmaker.
She makes it rain, yo.
And thank you to somebody that I have spent a lot of time praying for. Ronald III, Grampus of Christmas, proprietor of Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or you can shop online at shop.forhorsemancomics.com.
Make sure you tell them that we sent you.
Yes. Trigger warning, basically everything that's not sexual. This show is kind of strangely devoid of, like, sexual deviancy.
Yeah, like, what do you got? You got two people who kind of flirt and fell asleep in the same bed.
Yeah, but you would like if you told me about the show, I'd expect so perfect example, Joe, the guy who shot the little girl in the accident. When they were first alluding to him and he raped her.
Oh my god.
I was like, that dude's a rapist, or something like that. It's like there should be some town pariah who's a pedophile. It's like, nope, there's nothing like that.
No, he just accidentally shot a little kid.
Yeah, not that that's better or worse or whatever.
I think that's a little better.
I'm not here to pass judgment on that. They're both bad.
I will take dude accidentally shot child over guy intentionally raped child.
Yeah, now that you're using those accidentally and intentionally words. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But basically everything else, it's in here somewhere.
Yeah. And the thing is there's a lot of bad stuff in the show, but it's not very graphic with it.
No, not really.
This is the most... spoilers. We're a spoiler podcast. Mm-hmm. Anyone who still listens to us should know this by now. Mm-hmm. But this is the most non-graphic miscarriage I've ever experienced in fiction.
I don't know if you can even call it a miscarriage.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I have words about that scene later.
Yeah.
I have words. Okay. Our history. I've never seen it. He's been trying to get me to watch it for a long time. I finally watched it. There you go.
There's a lot of buzz around it, especially I'm in a bunch of movie groups on Facebook, mm-hmm. or film groups. One of them is called Red Letter Media Shitposting, mm-hmm. which we sometimes actually talk about the channel Red Letter Media, and a lot of times we just talk about random nonsense. But this kept coming up, and people are like, no, this is actually good. No, And a lot of times people will try to get you to watch, like, crap as a joke. But then the, like, Red Letter Media is like, no, we love this. And they dog on a lot of shit. And so I watched it, and I fell absolutely in love with it. But it made me so depressed. It made me, like, happy depressed. It's a very complicated emotion.
Complicated is probably the word I would use to describe my feelings about this.
Yeah.
High highs and low lows. Not low lows in terms of, like, quality of the content, but in terms of how it makes me feel.
Yeah. The show is extremely morose.
Yeah. I would say, like, too much for me personally, but I think the quality is there, like, for the audience that wants this. I can't argue with it.
And he's right here.
Yeah.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
Okay, so background, this was released on my papa's birthday, September 24th, 2021, which I think that's the day he turned 65, so he got to retire that day. So that's kind of death, rebirth. That's funny.
Did he go to Mass?
No, but my dad is a Catholic, but he has not been to Mass probably since he was in school.
Then how's he going to be a vampire?
He's not. He is absolutely not.
I have to wonder, just like really quick, after the show came out, like how many priests had to deal with vampire jokes?
I think that like the type of person who goes to Mass every week is probably not in the audience for this show.
They should be.
I mean, I guess that's stereotyping. But
this show honestly made me want to start going to Mass.
It's not like this. Okay. It's a Netflix limited series. We don't say mini anymore. We don't say mini series. We say limited series because we're fancy Nancy now.
Yeah.
This show has 5 different people on the writing credit, but we're just going to shout out the creator, the co-writer, and the director, Mike Flanagan.
He's like in my top 3 directors currently.
You may know him from Ouija, Origin of Evil, Gerald's Game, Dr. Sleep, The Haunting, The Fall of the House of Usher, The Midnight Club. I was going through IMDb pages for all the cast members, and they're every big actor or big character from the show is also in The Fall of the House of Usher,
yeah, it's
The Haunting, The Midnight Club. Yeah, he uses the same 12 people.
Yeah,
he's like the Adam Sandler of Netflix horror.
I was gonna say he's James Gunn.
So I found this quote from the Wikipedia page. Mike Flanagan describes Midnight Mass as a passion project, one that was deeply personal and dealt intimately with Flanagan's upbringing in the Catholic Church and his eventual sobriety and atheism. And when I read that, I was like, oh, you're an atheist? I didn't pick that up.
Which is weird, because I think this is one of the most unintentionally pro-Christian shows I've ever seen.
I didn't pick that up, but you can explain that to me in... Oh,
I will.
Okay.
I don't know if he intended this. He probably didn't.
It doesn't sound like it based on that quote, but I don't want to judge it based on a quote from a Wikipedia page.
But that's how I would tell. I've always described this to people. I'm like, this is the most unintentionally Christian show I've ever seen.
So it's award season here in the United States. We don't talk about
accolades.
Yeah, except for the Saturn Awards, because the Saturn Awards are the only ones that matter because they are specifically targeted at science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Mm-hmm. And Midnight Mass was nominated for Best Limited Event Television Series, and Kate Siegel, who plays Erin, was nominated for Best Actress in a Streaming Television Series. And I thought I would jump the gun and look up what Midnight Mass lost to in both.
Am I going to be mad?
Star Wars in both! Best Series lost to Obi-Wan, and in Best Actress, she lost to Ming-Na Wen, who of course plays Fennec Shand in the Book of Boba Fett. I was like, what? Yes! Star Wars taking home the gold in 2 categories. Suck it, Midnight Mass! That was so great.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Structure and themes. Let's talk about Salem's Lot. Because it is impossible.
People, when those groups would just be, like, whenever they wanted to be snide, they'd be like, why don't you just read Salem's Lot? The show was spoiled for me before I ever got to see it. Like, that was the first comment I was like, motherfucker. Like, not that it's hard to figure out.
No.
But I still like going in as blind as possible.
Yeah. I imagine there's probably a group of people who are like, just enjoy it for what it is, and, you know, judge it based on its own merits and its own not merits. It's like the same group of people who said, you know, just don't compare Justice League to the Avengers. And my response is, I'm sorry, I can't.
They're the same. Like, they're the same. This is almost beat for beat the same story.
I'm going to talk later about my experience watching this show because it was kind of a roller coaster. But there was a point in which I was watching this show where I was going to open this episode by saying, Chapelwaite is now my second favorite adaptation of Salem's Lot.
I had described this as the good adaptation of Salem's Lot to people. Mm-hmm. There are even some things that I think that it does exponentially better than Salem's Lot.
There was, at the high point of this show, I generally was thinking to myself, this is just better than Salem's Lot.
I think that if it wasn't for like one or two things, and part of that might even be nostalgia, I would say that this is like my favorite vampire
small town
horror story. In that like very specific subcategory genre. More on that in characters.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of ways for me that it kind of flubs at the end.
That is...
It doesn't... It's funny because people... so here's this quote from Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times, called this series the best Stephen King story Stephen King never wrote, and stated, even though this is an original work from Flanagan, it feels like a high-level adaptation of a particularly haunting King novel. And I think it's funny because King has this stereotype that he can't stick endings, he can't land endings, he can't stick a landing, he doesn't end his books well. Mm-hmm. And we both, generally that's not true, but there are obviously a couple examples where he doesn't. For me,
I just think the examples come from maybe some of his more popular works.
Yeah. For me, I think this kind of screws up the ending. And that kind of, even though I don't think that King stereotype is true, it kind of makes it feel like a King story.
There are some stuff I really love about the ending, and there's some stuff that I wish would have been a lot better, but we can get into that as we go. The duality of faith / atheism is like the through line of the entire show. And Mike Flanagan's an atheist. Mm-hmm. And I still argue that he made a very unintentionally religious show. And part of that comes from the fedora tipping monologue at the end of the story where, you know, what's-her-face is dying.
Oh, I hated that.
And going on and on about, like, cosmic consciousness.
It reminded me of everything Shuya said in Battle Royale 2.
And I'm sitting there going, you're describing mind-body dualism, Mike Flanagan, which is part of Christian theology. It's like Kantian metaphysics 101, but you don't want to attribute it to God. You're like, oh, it's atoms and it's... But the way she's describing it is this very cosmic aware... It's like the end of Legion, where we're talking about this sort of cosmic connectiveness between all minds and all things. And I'm like, okay, so you just don't want to use the word God for that. That's cute. I've sort of grown very tired of internet atheism over the last few years. I think a lot of them have this tendency to talk smarter than they actually are. And that ending monologue was one of the examples of that for me.
That whole thing just went in one ear and out the other. I understood very little of it, and I didn't care.
A lot of people really seem to like that. I liked all of them except that one.
I liked Riley's much shorter explanation of what happens when you die in the middle of the story.
That was a much more honest one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you wanted to... that was a very much more what I would expect, like, an atheist to say. Like, I die. Mm-hmm. And if I'm lucky, like, part of me goes back into the universe, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't, like, draped with this cosmic nonsense to make you feel better. It's
didn't make me feel better.
It's very dour.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you're being honest with atheism, it can be a very dour outlook on life.
I mean, it is. It's rational beyond comfort.
Yeah. And I do like seeing those themes go up against each other in an honest manner. And for most of the show, I thought it was like almost an honest conversation between the two. Which makes sense because he was raised Catholic, became an atheist, and it probably creates a lot of conflicting feelings, especially with like morality, how you see the world, how you've evolved as a person. It's especially good whenever he's doing like the AA meetings with Pruitt. At least I think those are really good. Their last one is my favorite. That's like in episode 5 is like peak of the show for me. How did that make you feel? I'm so sick of you lying to me. I'm jealous that you don't feel anything when you kill people. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. It's fucking gut-wrenching, but it's great.
Any other themes?
Forgiveness is a big one. Why am I talking about Christian theology so much on the Midnight Mass? Because it's a theme, right? Like when the girl goes to forgive the guy who shot her, and she's talking about how much she hates him.
Lisa and Joe.
Yeah, and I'm like, how often do you go to church because you can't forgive somebody if you hate them? It's like in the rules. Jesus straight tells you that. You can say that you're trying to forgive somebody, but if you harbor hate in your heart for a person, and this is word for word, it's in the red letters, Christ goes, you've already committed murder.
She's a kid.
It's a misstep of Christian theology. But it does kind of come across as a kid trying to forgive somebody. Where you get a lot of... Beth Ann. She's fucking great. If you want to, like, criticize...
Who's Beth Ann?
Or... Who's the bitch?
Bev.
Thank you.
Bev Keane.
I keep calling her Beth Ann for some reason. I told you I'm really bad with names. She's fucking great when it comes to, if you want to like put on a pulpit, people using religion for their own personal gains. That's another through line when it comes to that duality of complaining or contrasting these two worldviews. Us versus them is a really big one. The coming home, the family's another pretty big one. Not only family, but like generational trauma is really big in there. But I think we get a end of generational trauma that we usually don't talk about. And generational trauma, I see a lot of people like, oh, I love it when I see it in things. I'm like, you just want to see something criticize your parents vicariously. Where in this show, they also, Riley, like his dad sits him down and goes, you always acted like you were above this. He's just telling the kid how he feels in an honest manner. And I'm like, you don't often get that where the parents trying to honestly explain where they were coming from on that end of like what creates these sorts of conflicts.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
So I guess let's jump to characters and start with Aaron Green, played by Kate Siegel. I got kind of irritated when she's stabbing the thing's wings, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this could have been more on the nose, so good job. And then Mike starts playing bird sounds in the back, in case you didn't remember that her mom had the whole like clipping birds' wings thing, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, thanks for making it more obvious, because I didn't remember that.
You said you have stuff to say about her quote unquote miscarriage.
That she goes to get her ultrasound, or she's not even getting an ultrasound. She's just there for a checkup, and the doctor like listens, can't hear a heartbeat, and says, "Okay, well let's do an ultrasound," because even though we didn't plan on doing one, and there's no baby there, and the doctor looks at her and immediately says, "You had a miscarriage and you blacked it out. That's what I think after 30 seconds of investigation." No! You take this woman to a fucking hospital. The last time you saw her, there was a baby there. The next time there's not. You didn't even like look between her legs to look for like evidence of a miscarriage. You just took 30 seconds and looked and said, there's no longer a baby there. The only explanation is you miscarried and you blacked it out. Take her to a hospital! What the fuck is the matter with you?
I didn't get that bothered by that.
I did. That was... Oh my god.
Maybe if she was actively bleeding, but she wasn't. Father Paul Hill.
The best and the worst part of the show?
He is my favorite part of the show. I really love him. I love listening to him ramble about theology. Because I'm like, oh man, he's just... His rationalization is so fucking great. It's wonderful.
Christian rationalization is a big reason why I decided not to be a Christian.
I freaking love listening. His story about the mouse, I absolutely love.
Oh, yeah, where I manipulated this kid.
Yeah, it's great. It's like the exact opposite of any way I would ever expect a priest to try to handle that situation. Like, no, only Jesus could get rid. Like, oh, how else would somebody handle that? A religious person.
I have no idea.
Well, you probably sit there and explain, well, you know, only Jesus was resurrected, and only people will be resurrected in the end days, and they don't do it for him. But instead, he goes, I'm dealing with a child who's extremely upset, and goes, what is a way that I can restore his faith for the moment? And he rationalized it as, God is asking me to get as many years of faith out of this kid as I can.
I would not presume to assume how a priest would actually handle that, so I'm just not going to comment.
I've had too many little pets die. Granted, you know...
And taking them to a Catholic priest?
No, for me it was Baptist preachers.
I had a Methodist preacher do a funeral for my goldfish.
That's cute. See, that's something more like I would expect, is like, we'll bury it together, we'll pray together. I also think he's by far the best actor on the show.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. He was so good that it just made me uncomfortable and I didn't enjoy watching it.
Really?
Yeah.
He was too good, it circled back around.
His sermons... before the last two episodes, Mike Koontz was going to be his sermons. Not because they're badly written or poorly acted, but because they put me back to being a kid in church who didn't want to be there, and it was extremely triggering and not enjoyable to watch. He was so good that I didn't like it.
He was too convincing.
Yes.
I mean, you know, that's actually kind of fun to hear.
Mm-hmm. I thought that it was super obvious that he was Father Pruitt, but that isn't necessarily a criticism. Like, not everything has to be this huge major twist.
My only comment on that would probably be, I think the show treats it as a twist.
And that was what I was going to say. Like, it didn't have to be an issue. I just wish they wouldn't have treated it as, like, the thing that irritated me the most was where, after everybody already knows, it zooms in on that picture in the newspaper. And I'm like, I know, Mike. I know.
And the thing is they treat it like a twist like 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have Bev, screaming out like his actual name when he first dies.
Yeah.
And then, you have the zoom in, and then you have him confessing to Riley. Mm-hmm. And each time it's treated like, it feels, this might just be me reading into it, but each time it's treated like a revelation.
No, I think you're right, which, it's just, like,
That's my actual Koontz for the show, is they treat something that's an obvious twist as a twist more than once. Or at least it comes across that way to me.
But it also just, like the direction in the show, it likes to, it's like all the complaints you had with Prometheus, like, it likes to show things and make sure you don't miss them. Like,
yeah, it does.
Which doesn't typically bother me, but there was just one that I thought was so silly, was where Riley goes to his AA meeting on the mainland, and then as he's walking out of the meeting, it zooms in on the sign that says AA meeting, and I'm like, duh, nobody missed that.
That one's pretty bad.
Yeah, like, everybody knew what that was.
As a fanboy of the show, I will straight admit that this has a lot. This is, I told you, be ready to call me a hypocrite, because this has all the stuff I normally hate, but it has so much more that makes up for it for me. That's one of them. I'm like, it wants you to get the point to where it is creating, like, when it's telling, like, his quote-unquote backstory, and, like, showing him getting infected with vampirism, that is creating, like, they're not stained glass, they're, like, metal carvings to show us.
I think they were, like, wood carvings.
Wood carvings, yeah. Like, they're creating something to literally show the audience what you're already showing us in the flashback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, is that necessary? I mean, they look kind of neat.
They're cool.
But is that visually necessary is my question.
It's just, it feels like
that's another time it's treated like a revelation.
Yeah. Like, we know.
Yeah.
The cave scene is cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad I got to see it happen, but, like, we know.
Yeah. I feel that there's a way you could, like, film these scenes or, like, tell those stories and not treat it as a revelation for the audience.
Mm-hmm. I think there is. They weren't as bad about the other twist that he's the doctor's dad, which was also pretty obvious.
I'm gonna be honest, I did not get that my first go around. I was really, like, dumb. I was like, okay, so he's homophobic? I was just like, it took me, it was like episode, like, 6, and I went, oh.
I figured it out pretty early, and I don't normally pick up on that type of stuff, but it's when I figured out that he and the mom were together, then I was like, oh, so she's the daughter. And that's why he was watching
And
her.
I'm like, and I felt super stupid. I'm like, oh, that's why even though she's cured of her, like, Alzheimer's, when she said, who's my dad, she pauses.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I felt really dumb. Like, you have no idea. Because I do think, like, on this rewatch, like, super obvious. But I was also, but first time through, I was like...
You were probably just, like, super enjoying the vampire-ness.
I was like, small towns, boating island, vampires.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's definitely the best actor and probably just overall the best character. My biggest thing, and it might be my biggest thing of the show, maybe, there's two things, is that I feel like his redemption is too fast and too easy, and I don't believe it at all. That's me personally. That's like my one big quality complaint with this. It's just like one thing goes wrong, and he's like, "This was a mistake." It's like
I kind of have mixed feelings on it because it does seem to come super quick. But at the same time, like, he wakes up and his entire church is just covered in blood. But, like, at the same time,
you were
like,
turning them into vampires.
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah. It's like, where was that resolve? Where's the guy who's screaming at Riley in the rec center? Like, where did all that fire go?
Bev let it out of the church. That's my rationalization, is like, he didn't expect her to let them out, and then saying, like, them uncontrolled, but he didn't even get to see much of that. He just heard about it.
So it's okay for them to kill the people who are in the church who didn't drink the poison, but it's not okay for them to go out and kill the people.
Oh yeah, because they're going to get back up anyway.
Well, presumably still, and a lot of the other ones who didn't come to the mass do too, but I don't know. It's just fast. It is what it is.
I feel like it's how I planned things to go and how they actually went. Like, he probably had, like, an idea of it in his head.
Man plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They very literally will look at the camera, again, things that I normally hate, and go, hey, in case you missed it.
It's like Mike Flanagan sitting on your shoulder, whispering in your ear. And this was my intention in this scene. Okay. Riley Flynn, played by Zach Gilford.
For the most part, I call him Ben with depth.
I really like episode 5. I really like the resolution of his story, but I'm not that into him up until that point.
I like him on paper a lot. I call him Ben with depth because we talked about how Ben
Mears.
Yeah, didn't have a lot of going for him in terms of, other than like very early Stephen King isms. This is the Ben who was found to be responsible for his wife's death. I mean, it wasn't his wife, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This is the Ben that has to live with some real guilt and resolve that with his Catholic upbringing into his new worldview in the face of the supernatural that he's come home to.
So I associated this so heavily with Salem's Lot that I legitimately thought that the woman he killed was his wife or girlfriend until like episode 5, where it's revealed that she's just like a pedestrian or whatever. I'm like, didn't they say it was his girlfriend in the first episode? Like, no, it doesn't, but I just assumed.
Yeah. How this was not just considered plagiarism in some areas.
Yeah.
Granted, that's a really good way to get the themes across, like, that he wanted to talk about across. And that's probably one of the things I would, like, I don't know if I'd call it a criticism, but we did talk about how Ben Mears didn't have a lot of, like, meat to him compared to other Stephen King characters.
No, I do think Riley is a step up from Ben.
Yeah. He's such a step up that I kind of wish we had just a little bit more of him, but there's so many characters.
Yeah,
That's hard.
I was surprised that they killed him half, at a little past the midpoint, but I wouldn't change it. I think it worked. I
really love it, especially because they sort of set him up to be
the protagonist,
the hero. He's the only one not taking communion. He's the only one kind of skeptical. He's like, oh, that priest lied to me, and he's the only one pushing back. So on paper, they have him set up to be the one who figures it all out and saves everybody at the end, and then just very realistically, in terms of vampire stories, I guess, just pull the rug right out from under you.
No, I liked all that. I think it was good. I think episode 5 is probably the best episode.
It's probably one of my favorite episodes in television.
Yeah. That was my high point. That was where I was like, this is just better than Salem's Lot. This is so good. This is so good.
It's just the other 2 episodes don't live up to it.
Yeah, 6 and 7 were not as good.
I don't hate them, but I'm like, oh, God. Especially, like, he just catches on fire and the credits just rolls with her screaming.
That was I'm so sorry you have to see this. I'm like, oh shit.
Because it's the only way she'll believe.
Yeah.
and he's still like, he's not believing in the supernatural, but he's like, he's being rational. He's being who he is. This is the only way I can convince you to do one of 2 things, which is either run or go save people.
It's Virginia's death in Let the Right One In, but like cranked up to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not doing it. It's like I'm also doing this to try and save the woman I love / maybe save this community.
Yeah.
It was great. Who's next? Bev Keane. Best, just the most. She's just great. She's just awesome.
My favorite scene with her is when everyone's being murdered in the church and she hides. Oh, what are you gonna do? Shoot me? I'll get up 5 minutes, bang.
I knew she's not gonna drink the poison. Like, I don't know what her plan was, but I knew she wasn't gonna drink the poison. Because she just...
And she didn't want to be eaten either. Like,
she's... That... person who is willing to ask other people to make sacrifices, but not willing to make those sacrifices herself.
Probably, like, embezzled money from the entire community.
And the worst part, she knows that she'll come back to life.
Yeah.
But she can't do it because she's just scared.
Yeah.
Or she's above it, or whatever.
She is scared, but she has to act above it all. Mm-hmm. And that's her. I love it. I love it so much.
So at the end when she's on the beach, I was like, wait, are they going to let her die with dignity? If they do, I'm pissed. And then she starts burrowing like a dog, like, no, please, God, I'm going to burrow in the sand and hide from the sun. I'm like, this is great. I love it.
Yeah, if you would have thought about that like 20 minutes sooner.
Yeah, it might have worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it'd be hard to stay there for an entire day.
Yeah, but I mean, you're dead. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you're going to do when you come back out. You don't have any food. You have to wait for boats.
Yeah, I mean, you're alive and not dead.
I guess, yeah. That's another high point. That's the high point of episode 7.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite part of the last episode.
Is her dying on the beach screaming.
It's either that or Ollie throwing the lighter into the rec center.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You know what I think? I don't have any evidence for this. This is like, we talk about headcanon sometimes. Mm-hmm. If she would have used his name, I think he would have sided with her, but because she calls him boy, in my head, he goes, she doesn't even know my name.
Yeah, I could...
And then, like, I'm just a pawn. Like, that's how I, like, think about it. Not only did she just shoot his dad, but she can't even use his name in that instance. Because he's still beneath her.
Personally, I would hope that he would do it either way, but I could see that happening. That character, the sheriff's son, just kind of perplexed. So the whole, I want to go to church, like I want to do what everybody else is doing. We're different. We're outcasts because of your faith. I want to experience their faith. That made sense to me. But like,
plus literal miracles.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I can't imagine sitting, like, any person, but like, who would sit through that mass and watch those people, like drinking that poison and still would like go through with it. So, but here's the thing, the other thing about him. His dad tells him not to take communion, and he says, I'm not going to take communion. What I thought was going to happen, and I think maybe even would have been better, is if he drinks the poison and then just dies.
Because he didn't take communion.
Yeah, but I guess, like, I guess he was secretly taking communion. And,
well, because of course you're going to do what your dad tells you not to do.
Yeah, which makes sense. But I thought, like, story-wise, if he just straight dies, like...
That probably would have been better. That would have been even more morose. Mm-hmm. And the ending itself is pretty overall morose.
It's like it's fighting with Pet Sematary for...
It's Salem's Lot, but the fireworks.
Yeah. Okay. So Sheriff Hassan, played by Rahul.
So good.
He's the sexiest man.
Oh my god.
He is so hot.
He has me wanting to go to mosque.
I'll convert. I can be I
probably just can't tell them the reason.
If he'll be like, I'm sorry. I just, like, we talked about, like, in like the Boogeyman episode, like that tired dad eyes with the beard and just a little bit of gray and the just like
the peppered gray.
Yeah.
And just that just the right amount of like honey dark skin.
Yeah, it's like, damn.
Oh my god, dude. You got Gay Daniel coming out.
Yeah, that's my type. Like, damn. I've never had a penis in my mouth, but there's
maybe.
But maybe.
Yeah.
But I like the character. I could see some people saying...
I could see some people also saying maybe a little on the nose.
And maybe it is, but it's also like a real issue. A topical, real thing.
Yeah.
Especially in the past couple months. I mean, when we took our break in between these two episodes, I got a notification from BBC that we just launched another missile strike into Yemen, and I'm like, oh. So anybody who says this character's on the nose isn't really wrong, but it's something that needs to be talked about.
Biden's Twitter account, whoever actually runs it, just made a post. He's like, we will not be going over into endless wars in the Middle East again, and I couldn't stop myself. This was the same as my work comment. I just commented, sure. Like, dude, like, literally all of your actions right now are not indicating that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not the point of our podcast.
No.
We'll make a new political podcast.
Yeah.
Well...
but I like the character. My favorite scene with him is, I mean, aside from when he whips out his gun and tries to shoot the vampire, is the scene where he's just trying to reasonably say, don't give my Muslim child a Christian Bible in a public school, please.
Yeah.
And he's like as reasonable and intelligent about it and not offensive about it as he can be.
He's being very polite.
Yeah. And she just... when the part where Bev says something about, and I'm sorry, but a lot of the Quran is offensive, and I'm just like, girl, just stop. It's so cringy. It's like an episode from The Office. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Those are some pretty, again, really good high points. I mean, I hated that he died, but I also love like the scene where he gets shot.
Maybe he's not dead. He's probably dead.
I'm like 90% sure he bleeds out.
Yeah, I think it's better that he and Aaron and Sarah all die. I think it serves the story better. I wish more people had lived other than just 2 kids, and one girl doesn't even get to keep walking.
Only 2 people live in Salem's Lot.
It's really more like 1.5.
Yeah. That's like a joke I would make.
I mean, but it's not wrong. I mean, like, she loses the control over the lower half of her body. I mean, she's still a full person, obviously. But
yeah, but
it's just like, it's the turd on top of your shit sundae. It's like, fuck. All my whole town is burned. All my family is dead. We have no money. We have nothing. Oh, and also I can't walk now.
That's another, like, part I really liked that they had with Riley when he was talking to Pruitt, and he's sitting there going, you know, I can rationalize like her spine like healing and just a misdiagnosis, but I can't figure out how you knew. And I, again, like setting him up to be the hero. I love it. I love everything about that.
No, that was good. 'Cause God told me, suck it.
Why does there have to be a reason?
Yeah.
There was a perfectly reasonable explanation.
Yeah, because I put vampire blood in the wine, sucker.
I found a 10,000-year-old vampire.
Angel blood. Dude, that vampire was 16.
Yeah.
Nobody said that was 10,000-year-old Mr.
Yeah.
That's definitely in a cave in the Middle East on the road to Damascus. Yeah, I assumed it was centuries or millennia old. Lisa Scarborough, played by Anna Ross Simon, I guess is how you pronounce that. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. That's just like that whole little story with her and Joe, just like absurdly heartbreaking, absurdly sad, and of course it just makes it all the worse when she loses the ability to walk at the end.
My only question, like, even if you accidentally shoot somebody, you usually go to jail for a minute.
Yeah.
I guess he could have, and then just came back.
Yeah, I mean, she was like 7, I think, or 6.
Yeah, so it's been...
She's probably 16.
I guess I shouldn't need that spelled out for me, but that's what I always think every time I watch it. Like, why are you... Like, no one in this community treats me like a person. I'm like, yeah, you shot a kid and, like, never even tried to be better.
Yeah.
Not that I don't, like...
Accidents happen.
And that's another, like, through line of the show is, like... What Riley did, he didn't do it intentionally. What he did was stupid.
It's still bad.
Playing with a gun when you're drunk is all... They implied he was drunk.
But, I mean...
Is also stupid.
That's why we have manslaughter, second degree, first degree.
And, you know, that's another thing, is like these horrible accidents and how we live with it is just, and not only how we live with it, but how our victims probably live with it. You know, and that's something that sometimes people don't always. This is something I wanted to talk about, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. I always ramble about this, but it's the difference between forgiveness and redemption is, and I always see this. I see this from Zoomers a lot. Like, someone will be given a redemption arc in a story, and they'll go, "This person doesn't deserve to be redeemed." And I'm like, that person you might not think they deserve your forgiveness, but redemption to me is always is an internal journey, where forgiveness is the external journey.
Redemption is something you choose for yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm required by law to know the difference because Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's the example I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
He redeemed himself. It doesn't mean that the galaxy has to forgive him.
No, and they don't.
Yeah. But his redemption was a personal choice. That I was going to use Darth Vader as my example. Thank you.
Yeah, and then by extension, Ben Solo also.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is a lot, and after she comes there to forgive him, he decides to go on a journey of redemption, which is his own internal journey.
Yeah,
but I do think that there's a lot. I feel that there's this generational disconnect sometimes with people, where they're like, if you've done this one horrible bad thing, you don't get to even try for yourself. Cancel culture. I didn't want to use the word, but I feel that's something we need to move past. My second big example, and this is the example of I think it being done poorly, is Harley Quinn. They've been trying to turn her into a hero for years. And I always say, if Harley Quinn gave a damn about redemption, she would be in a jail cell asking for forgiveness every day for every person she helped murder. If you want that version of Harley Quinn, and you also like Star Wars, read Dr. Aphra. Yeah. That's the thing, is sometimes redemption means facing the consequences of the shitty thing you did. So maybe it means going to jail. Maybe it means doing community service the rest of your life. Maybe that just means letting something go. It could mean anything. And that's just my very, very small ramble about cancel culture and redemption versus forgiveness, and how I think the show does it, for the most part, pretty well. I think we just need to let Twitter die, and then I think Twitter has poisoned an entire generation of people, but I'm also old, so maybe I shouldn't be. Because every time I see Zoomer posting, I'm like, oh god, this generation was a mistake. But then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm 36. I'm just my dad now. Yep. So, I'm how Gen X felt about millennials a decade ago. Yeah, and not that our generation doesn't have its own set of issues. Yeah, so. Yeah. I just think this show does that well. Anyway, next. So Dr. Sarah Gunning, played by Annabeth Gish. I still feel very stupid, but so I on my rant, I didn't like that one scene, but I do like the character. One of my favorite scenes is in the first half of episode 6, like the little war council that Aaron and Sarah and Mildred have. It's kind of like the scenes in the hospital in Salem's Lot, where they finally like, let's get the team together. We gotta get this shit. It's also like Salem's Lot, where they just have just enough evidence finally. Like, they each had like an individual piece that made them feel crazy, but then when they all put it together, like, vampires. Yeah. But this is a criticism of every vampire story written pretty much after Dracula. Is like, the stories almost only ever work if you live in a universe where vampire stories don't exist. But they have to exist in this universe because she brings them up. Yeah. And that's how when I first watched the show, I rationalized it. Like, of course Pruitt doesn't know what it is, because the stories just don't exist in this universe. He thinks it's an angel. Why do you think it's an angel if Dracula exists in your universe? Don't know. I would imagine that he was not exposed to a lot of
pop culture media.
Yeah, it has to be something like I can rationalize it, but I think rationalization just works easier for like a vampire story if you just tell your audience Dracula doesn't exist in this world. This is their first experience with vampires, or maybe there's like myths, but they're not. It's not like a big pop culture phenomenon.
What bugged me is when she goes to try and like recruit the sheriff. I'm like, why didn't you bring some blood to burn for him?
Oh my god!
Like, hey sheriff, step outside and we'll show you something fucking weird.
Okay, I need you to listen to her story. Look at this blood and just look at my mother.
Yeah, I mean, is she not evidence of, like, you're not believing the whole miracle through line? So what's up with my mom? Like, you can rationalize the girl. Like, okay, she was misdiagnosed and she's been healing over time.
You can rationalize like one or two of these things, but like everyone's back pain is going. Everyone's literally in the show looking younger.
That could just be like, oh, there's something in the water. But my mom de-aging like 40 years, you can't rationalize that. But I thought she kind of served that. She was kind of the Dr. Cody and the Matt Burke kind of Van Helsing-ish role. And she served that well. I
think there's just some quirks that if you're like very like trope savvy, like if you, how much vampire media do I absorb?
Too much.
That you spot some of this. I still feel very dumb for not picking up that she was the daughter on my first watch through. I was like, oh, come on.
I think you're just enjoying it on an emotional level.
This show makes me cry every time I watch it.
Sometimes I don't pick up stuff in Star Wars media that I should, because I'm just enjoying it on an emotional level and not actively thinking about what I'm reading or watching.
When you texted me the other day and said, hey, I'm only on like episode 2, and you asked me if I was like, I was almost done. I was literally trying to stop myself from crying. Because the show just gets to me.
Yeah, it's extremely emotional. I had a very, very emotional reaction to the Easter Vigil.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Episode 5 gets me a lot.
That too.
Mostly again because I don't even know where my martyr complex comes from. But every time I see somebody just going, this is the only way I know how to save somebody, and then they die, and he's just telling this woman how much he loves her, and he knows that's the only time he's going to get to do it. Oh god, it's upsetting me now.
Yep. Okay, I cut down this character list a lot.
You have to.
Yeah.
Like, this is even a lot for us.
Okay, so 2 more. So the mom, Mildred Gunning. I really liked her. I actually just really liked everything, but I loved her. You're never going back. They never go back to this is not my church. Like, from the beginning, she's like, my bullshit meter is just going off like crazy.
That is not the man I knew.
Yeah. I liked her a lot. And I also liked her conversation with Paul in the last episode, where he's like, if you would have just come and asked me, I would have taken off my collar and going anywhere with you. And she's just like, listen, dude, I was not going to ruin 4 people's lives for you. I'm sorry. That was never going to happen.
Yeah. We literally all made our choices, and it was just better to cuck my husband.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that is a good thing.
It's not great.
No.
But I mean, in the face of all the other choices, I guess.
Yeah, like...
Again, it's another one of those great things. Like, none of these people are not... They're the furthest thing from perfect. They're very people-y.
Yeah, they're all very real.
Yeah. And you could just... What's this actor's name? The priest? Hamish Linklater?
Hamish
Linklater.
Hamish Linklater.
So,
or it might be Linklater.
He just seems so upset when he's talking to her about this, and seems like genuinely sad. And it's almost like he did it all just for a second chance with her. And he's going, oh, I really did fuck up.
Yeah, you did.
We all made our choices. And then she still forgives him. I
think, and another thing that was just a little too on the nose is when he pulls off his collar at the end and throws it in the stream. It's just like, I kind of got that without you showing me that part, but whatever.
Yeah.
it's not the worst example of that in the show.
I think it was the best that you guys did. Like, dying on the bridge was enough.
Yeah. And then our last character, who's not a character really at all, the Angel, played by Quentin Boisclair. I'm sorry.
The worst vampire. Like, I called Riley good bid. This is worst vampire.
I thought that the only, spoiler alert, I didn't think it was scary, but the only time where it got close for me was like the couple times where you just see the glowing eyes in the dark.
I thought that was really good.
I thought it was amazing, and I was like, well, when I actually see this thing, there is no way I'm not going to be disappointed, and I was disappointed.
I almost wish they never would have showed it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would have done it.
I don't know either. Or at least save it to the last episode. I don't know.
Like, even it showing up in a hat and a coat, I was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But, like, in the full priest robes and then, like, the full body shot, I'm like... Mm-hmm. I've seen the vampire design before, too. It looks just like vampires you'd see, like, from, like, Legacy of Kain.
It reminded me a lot of the last voyage of the Demeter vampire.
Yeah. And remember when I was criticizing about how, I've seen this Dracula, like, 1 billion times. Mm-hmm. This is another example of me seeing it beforehand.
It reminded me of Azog, the White Goblin from the Hobbit movies.
And I know bats are very heavily associated with vampires. Mm-hmm. I literally wish they would choose any other animal to, like, take design cues from.
Let's have an adaptation where it's just like wolves, or rats.
Spoilers for Necroscope. They're described as looking somewhere between a bat and a wolf.
We will do Necroscope.
And down the road.
I need a break from vampires. It's gonna, yeah. We
need a break. No, I agree. I'm just saying that in terms of design, I'm like, at least they added wolf.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I like that. I did really like the cave scene.
The cave scene was really good. It being, like, masked in darkness helps a lot.
I liked, one of my favorite parts is where he's, Father Paul is leaving to go, like, up the stairs. He's like, oh, and he turns around and it's just standing there in the dark, like, watching him go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
I guess we can go to scary shit.
Scary shit. Is this miniseries scary?
I think that there are some themes that might existentially make your skin crawl. But in terms of, like, actual horror, I think it's kind of low.
I think it's extremely effective, but it's effective at upsetting me, disturbing me, grossing me out.
The thought of killing someone in a drunk driving or in a gun accident. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't drink and drive, but, like, hypothetically, even, like, if I just skidded off the road.
Yeah.
Killing, like, maybe I'm cleaning one of my guns and it accidentally goes off and I shoot a kid.
Ugh.
Like, I can't even imagine. That's terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and this is another thing I'm super embarrassed to admit, the goddamn jump scares in the early episodes of the show got me every fucking time when I first watched it. It would, like, show the eyes, and then there'd be that, like, little sting. I'm like, every time.
One jump scare got me in the show,
mm-hmm.
and it wasn't any of the vampire ones.
Yeah.
It was the Molotov cocktail coming in through I jumped out of my seat.
That one also got me. But I'm embarrassed to admit that, but mm-hmm. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So they got me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm desensitized to them, but is it scary? I don't think so.
No.
I think it might scare...
I think it absolutely could scare kids.
It could scare kids. I also think it might scare, like, a Beck, who's, like...
When I finished it, I texted her, I was like, because I asked both of them if they wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
I was like, vampires? And I'm so glad neither of them watched it.
I can see somebody who's, like, doesn't like horror or doesn't have a lot of exposure to horror tropes, this probably freaking them out.
Yeah.
But again, I'm super desensitized.
Yeah. No, it was, parts of it were extremely upsetting, but not scary.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
So what I wrote for The Power of Christ Compels You is Mike Flanagan is Frank Miller and the Catholic Church is Superman. It's like, oh, you don't like the Catholic Church, do you, Mike Flanagan?
He's Twitter, and it's the Burns run on Superman. They absolutely seem to hate him for some reason. I figured out why, though, but that's a story for another day.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
Kings and Koontz. Daniel, what is your king?
Episode 5, all of it. It might be my single favorite episode in streaming. I'm hard pressed to think of something I like more from a streaming show.
But no, yeah, episode 5 is my favorite of all of them. And that was the high point. That was when I was highest on it. It was hard. It's hard for me to like pick a king, because there's so much good. I think the two moments in the show that I had the best reactions to was when the dad. Oh, did you know that the dad, like Riley's dad, is that guy was Elliot in E.T.?
There's no fucking way.
For real.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He is. That was Elliot from E.T.
Okay.
Yeah. But when he delivers Monsignor Pruitt's letter to Father Paul, and he opens it and it just says, just remember, we're all ash and we return to ash. I love that.
That is pretty good.
And then I laughed so hard when Bev goes into the parish and Joe's there dead on the ground. And Father Paul's against the wall cover and he's like, I don't know. I laughed for like 2 full minutes.
It is really funny.
Yeah. I don't know. My king is, I don't know. Fuck. Also, I'll just say episode 5 too, because that's the high point of the show. It's the best episode. It's everything in it is great. It even like carries into like the first part, the first half-ish of episode 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, that too. And my Koontz is just the Easter Vigil on. Like it was just. There's a mode of me that likes super dour and depressing shit. See our Pet Cemetery episode.
Yeah.
But this just hit me on the wrong day. I was like, and it's not even like, oh, I would have done this. I would have done something differently. It's just like, and it's not even a quality thing. Like,
it's just depressing.
It's just so depressing that I got super sad watching it. I was like, I'm not having a good time.
It might be the most dour thing we've watched.
Yeah. And that's with Pet Cemetery in the mix. So that's my Koontz. And even like if I rewatch this in a couple years, I might have a totally different. I might be like, wow, that was awesome.
Man, look at all that fire. It's so good.
Yeah. But just like this first watch, I was just like so sad and so glum and so depressed. I couldn't handle it. It was not fun.
My Koontz is a little bit meta. After I watch the show, every time, because this is my 3rd watch through, I end up listening to church music for like a month.
I considered making the music my Koontz. I did not like the musical choices.
And now I'm just listening to church music on a playlist. I'm like, man, I'm vibing with this. I'm gonna go to church tomorrow.
Rankings. So I'll tell you, when during episode, like at the high, like when he's in the boat and like he's about to catch on fire, I'm sitting there like, this is my number 3. Like, This is better than everything we've watched except for It and Gremlins.
Yeah.
This is my number 3.
And then the next 2.
And then I watch them and I'm like, fuck this show. I'm going to put it in my bottom 10. And then I finished it this afternoon and I made myself like wait a couple hours.
People on this island are fucked.
And I'm just like, I don't know where to rank this, because this is definitely one of the best things that we've watched.
Like in a pure technical sense.
But it also made me so absurdly unhappy.
I needed a good cry, so...
I didn't cry. Maybe if I would cry, I would have felt better.
I'm embarrassed at how much I cry when I watch the show.
What I ended up deciding was that I was going to put it, like, in the direct middle of my list, which I think put it at, like, 46, I think, was the middle. It's almost the direct middle. And, like, if we're just talking quality, it should probably be in, like, the top 5. But it just made me so fucking sad.
Yeah.
But I might watch this again in a couple years and have a different...
Let yourself cry next time.
Well, it's not that I didn't let myself. Like, if I need to cry, I'll cry. I just didn't.
It's okay, Ryan.
I want to cry.
I want to feel nothing.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I'm jealous that you got to cry.
Yeah, go into that top 10 here.
Here's your top 10.
Oh,
you're gonna bump Dog Soldiers out of your top 10. You're a bad man.
Oh no.
I meant to mention this. Remember the rule we established during Dog Soldiers: if you want to establish someone as a villain, have them kill a dog super early.
Yeah.
Again, that happens here.
Oh, my Koontz should have been all the cats dying.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't mention it.
It's my number 2.
It's pretty, yeah, I mean, it's pretty high praise. It's pretty good. Alright.
It also has a lot of that artsy-fartsy stuff I love.
Yeah, I decided I just wasn't going to complain about that because what does it accomplish? Further reading.
Oh, further reading.
I think if you really like the show and you haven't read Salem's Lot, I don't want to be like the people in Daniel's Facebook group, but you probably should.
Yeah.
And also Chapelwaite, a very similar TV show. Still absolutely perplexed what they're going to do for a season 2.
Dour-ish, not compared to this.
It is a pretty dour show, but not compared to this.
A dour-ish vampire show.
Yeah. Upcoming on the Horror of Babylon, our next novel episode this Sunday, we are doing Goosebumps, The Beast from the East by R.L. Stine. And then the following Sunday on January 28th, we're doing the first Goosebumps theatrical film starring Bowser. Woo! My chair broke.
Oh, I think I just pressed this thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
My foot was moving around.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And then our next 2 bonus episodes on Thursday, January 25th, back to the Treehouse of Horror Babylon with the Stranger Things parody, Danger Things, where Marge has her hair down, so just get ready for us to just horn dog it up the whole time. And then on the February 1st, we are finally going to review Luann Noodles, a.k.a. The Ramen Girl, starring Brittany Murphy. And speaking of horn dogging it up...
Yeah. Our patrons.
our patrons who horn dog it up for Daniel all the time. Thank you to our patrons, Abigail, the first breaker of chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the full metal patron, and Ben, the fourth patron of hope, and Mia, the fifth, the rainmaker.
She makes it rain, yeah.
And thank you to our and thank you to Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can shop online at shop.forhorsemencomics. And there's the Morgantown Mall has like a wooded backlot, like a couple areas of a wooded area behind it. And if you travel to the center of that wooded area, you will find a trailer. And if you enter that trailer, you will first say, this is exactly how I pictured this. But you will also find one Ron Arnold III, Grampus of Christmas, and he's just sitting back there drinking Diet Mountain Dew and just watching the Star Wars Holiday Special again and again on repeat.
That's what we should have done for our shorts, is just all of your clips about Ron.
Oh, clip them all together?
No, just like, here's one, here's another.
Oh, okay.
So we always have something, maybe put like a picture or something up over it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Just an endless cycle of burns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for rewatching Midnight Mass.
Oh, I had an incredible time.
Yeah, it's I'm glad I've seen it. Don't need to reiterate my opinions, but now I'm glad I have seen it. Thank you to our patrons. Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.